So in April of 1945, Soviet and US troops linked up along the Elbe River in the final days of the war in Europe. Now very quickly these allies would turn to very fierce foes with the initiation of the so-called Cold War. And the next time that Soviet and US troops were able to shake hands freely would be 18 years later here in Skopje in 1963. And the reason for this? Well, Yugoslavia's non-alignment and neutrality in the Cold War. Well, my initial thoughts on Skopje, and don't take this the wrong way, I don't mean any offense when I say this, but it doesn't look like a real place. I feel like I'm walking around in a theme park, and I think there's really one major reason for that, and that's the fact that there's just statues everywhere. So, all of the statues that you see here in the center of the city are reasonably new. They're all part of a project known as Skopje 2014, which has completely redesigned the city center, and very controversial as you can imagine, also because, well, it ended up costing $700 million. So I guess it's one of those things like brutalist architecture, you either love it or you hate it. So this bridge is actually known as the Bridge of Art from 2012, and there's 35 statues here of artists, composers, and very influential people from Macedonia's cultural scene. Well, for a long period of time, Skopje was actually known as Uskub, and it was the capital of the Vilayet of Kosovo, part of the Ottoman Empire. Which is very interesting because present-day Kosovo lies just to the north of here. And then at varying other periods, well, it was part of Serbia, part of Bulgaria, and then of course later on part of the unified Yugoslavia. But yeah, it's interesting as well because Macedonia continues to have a very ethnically diverse population. About 25% of the country is made up of ethnic Albanians, and they actually refer to the city of Skopje as Shkup. Even the building housing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does not look real. I don't get it. Yeah, the further you get away from the immediate city center, the nicer things get. I guess that's the way to put it. In other words, the less tacky, the less it looks like Las Vegas. Well, here's a little beauty. The Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts from the Tito period. And yeah, the one and only Mother Teresa, who was Albanian, would have been born here in Skopje. On the morning of July 26th of 1963, a devastating earthquake hit Skopje at 5:17 in the morning. And that earthquake ended up killing more than 1,000 people, displacing about 200,000, and leveling roughly 80% of the city. And the clock says 5:17 a.m., which is the time that the earthquake would have hit Skopje. So in the aftermath of that absolutely horrific 1963 earthquake, the US President John F. Kennedy, who at that time was in the final months of his life, decided to initiate an earthquake response, sending teams of American soldiers and others over here to the former Socialist Republic of Macedonia, which at that time was part of the Yugoslavian Federation. Now the thing is, that's because the US and Yugoslavia had established pretty good relations on the back end of the Tito-Stalin split of 1948. At the same time, by 1963, Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union also had pretty good relations. So Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev also offered support, and so did countries from across the world. Actually, Skopje would become known as the city of international solidarity because of this. Skopje is definitely unique in terms of its architecture. It does have more socialist, brutalist architecture than any other city in the world. I mean, the architecture is just out of this world, and to be honest, I'm not sure if I like it half the time or not, but you can definitely tell that this is all post-1963. How brutal do you want your brutalism? So there might be a million fairly terrible statues here in Skopje, but at least there's one of our big bro Tito, Josip Broz, the glue, the man who literally kept Yugoslavia together. So when Yugoslavia was disintegrating at the start of the 1990s, Macedonia was actually the only republic that was able to secede without any sort of bloodshed whatsoever. So since 1991, it's been an independent state. Now the thing is, what's been controversial is the name. So today it's officially known as the Republic of North Macedonia, after having been previously been called the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. What a long name. And that's because, well, initially after independence, it wanted to just call itself the Republic of Macedonia, but Greece took issue with this, because actually the northern part of Greece is also known as Macedonia. So yeah, it's North Macedonia, but to people here, it's really just Macedonia. You know, my favorite thing about visiting any European city is always the old town. You can see all of the Yugo nostalgia on display here. Tito, Yugoslavia bags. The signs here are actually written in 3 languages: Macedonian, English, and Albanian. You know, I wasn't expecting the first time that I've seen Palestine Cola to be here in Skopje, but yeah, let's try it out. Well, if you remember, a few days ago in Sofia, we failed at getting our shopska salad, but here in Skopje, a resounding success. And I'm at a spot known as Tourist, which I know about because apparently it's Action Bronson's favorite restaurant in this city. And of course, what Balkan meal would be complete without the classic cevapi? So last night I made my way by bus from Sofia to Skopje, and it only took about 4.5 hours in total. Actually, the journey was scheduled to be an hour longer, but for whatever reason we got here super early. But anyway, border control, no problem whatsoever. I was just asked if this was my first time visiting Macedonia. He didn't say North Macedonia, which I found pretty fascinating. But yeah, it's interesting actually between the two countries, because Bulgaria does not recognize the Macedonian nation and the Macedonian language. To them, the Macedonian nation, they're really just Bulgarians, and the Macedonian language, it's just a variant of Bulgarian. It's a dialect, basically. So I guess you can say it's a little bit like the Moldovan question. Once again, yes, we are actually in North Macedonia, not Albania, but the flag of Albania is everywhere. You know, just like in Tirana, there's also a Skanderbeg Square here in Skopje. And yeah, I mean, that makes sense considering the significant Albanian population, and it really makes you feel like you're in Albania proper. So one thing about Skopje is that it's home to one of the oldest Jewish communities in the Balkans. And that community nowadays is very, very small, numbering perhaps just a few hundred. And that's because of the Holocaust. Now in 1941, Macedonia was occupied by the Kingdom of Bulgaria. And Bulgaria was a very close ally of Nazi Germany. In fact, they would facilitate the Holocaust together. In 1943, more than 7,000 Jews from the area in and around Skopje were taken to what was known as the Monopol Tobacco Factory, and they were held in horrific conditions for up to 11 days. But a significantly worse fate was awaiting them. They were ultimately transported to the Treblinka death camp in modern-day Poland, and as a result, you nowadays have the Holocaust Memorial Center for the Jews of Macedonia right here in the heart of Skopje. So definitely worth a visit if you ever make it to this city. Alright everybody, so it's now the next morning and I'm getting ready to head over to the bus station here in Skopje to continue my Balkan adventure. And full disclosure, I've been incredibly sick the entire time that I've been on this trip since I arrived in Sofia, and this is now day 5. The thing is, yesterday was my only full day here in Skopje, and I had to spend a lot longer than I would have liked, basically in my hotel room, pretty much napping, trying to get my strength up. So I feel as if that's maybe clouded my perception of Skopje a little bit, because I was thinking about this morning and I was like, I don't really like this city too much. And again, it could just be the illness more than anything else, but also I do feel as if the Skopje 2014 stuff, it pretty much tarnishes the city center. It is one of those places where, from what I've seen, the further away you get from the city center, the more interesting and kind of real it becomes. So maybe I'll have to come back to Skopje at some point, but for now, let me jump on this bus and get out of here and hopefully see you on the next episode. Wish me luck, drink some tea, and try to get my strength up to 100%.